back everybody. I'm going to be recording a tutorial this time on the Steve French painting I did, I think it was a few months back now. Maybe it's just a few weeks time. It tends to fly lately, so let's get started. So right now, as you can see, I'm just using the standard round brush tool. I'm just doing some tonal sketches. I use a little bit of line, just to help convey form, but really we're looking for kind of just overall forms, paying attention to volumes and light. And I kind of had an idea of what I wanted going into this, but I wasn't really 100% sure. I kind of was originally going to go for something sort of more Japanese themed, kind of Samurai Champloo inspired, but in the end it sort of got a little bit more sci-fi and just went all over the place, which is fine. So as you can see, I'm still using normal layers in Photoshop, still using the round brush, 50% opacity or so. By the way, this is all done in Adobe Photoshop CS4. I'm using a PC, not a Mac. And I'm using the Cintiq 21UX from Wacom. It is a pen interactive display, not a tablet, and I am not using my mouse to paint. Alright, with that out of the way, here you can see that I'm just using the lasso tool to move some stuff around, reposition the limbs, and then I can go in and just fix it up using the brush. I'm really not too worried about details. I'm just trying to sort of, once again, think about poses, dynamism, volume of the character. What is his pose saying about the character? How does he fit compositionally into the frame? And you can see here I was sort of fooling around with the background a little bit. I kind of wanted, I don't know, kind of a cityscape maybe, but I really wasn't too committed to it. I was just sort of fooling around and seeing where it took me. If you're interested in seeing this in real time, you can watch the live stream recordings, which this was gathered from. I do live streams every Sunday at 2 p.m. On Twitch TV, and you can find all the information in this video's description. Okay, so here I'm fooling around, doing a little bit more refinement on the helmet, just sort of seeing where I can take it. I was kind of inspired by, kind of like Space Race era helmets, and especially by kind of those silly looking scooter helmets, the really bulbous ones. So I wanted to include elements from both of those designs into this guy's outfit. I think my original idea was that he was going to be sort of like a parcel guy, like a delivery dude on a lunch break or something. But instead he became an alien. Eventually. So here I'm just doing a little bit of work on the helmet. Still using normal layers with the brush, just a round brush. I don't really need to use special types of blend modes yet. Sometimes I use them just sort of knock in shadows or highlights or make something pop. But or if I'm working on something in the background, I might want to just darken or lighten, so I'll use those two layer types. But for most of what I'm doing here, all I have to do is use the normal brush, or a round brush on a normal layer, 100% straight hard edge, anywhere between 30 and 100% opacity, sometimes less. It really depends on what I'm doing. But you can see here I'm sort of working in the collar and making it look like it's coming off the jacket and popping up, using some shadows and occlusion to really give it that 3D appearance. I also use a lot of atmospheric perspective. Atmospheric perspective is, to summarize, it's adding the, I guess it sort of simulates the effect that air and particles in air have on light and details and the way we view things. So if something is closer, it'll be in higher contrast. The colors will be more legible. Details will be more visible. The further something gets away from us, the more particles and distortion of light occurs. So there's more particles in the air, and there's more distortion of light. So things that are further away will be in less contrast, and they tend to be bluer also. In this case, they'll be yellow because we have a yellow sky. But on Earth, or if you have a blue sky, they'll tend to be more blue. And here I'm just working on a nice little hand. This guy's just taking it easy. He's a nice jacket, skinny jeans. As you can tell, his proportions are a little bit distorted. They're not really dead on for a human. I want them to sort of be a little bit exaggerated and stylized, a little bit more elongated. And I think that comes across nicely. Alright, so we're still working on the jacket, just doing little folds and creases. And now we're starting to throw in the other hand, which is going to be holding a burger. We haven't done that yet. But first I just want to knock in some of the primary tones. And notice how I'm using the eyedropper tool to reference my other hand to make sure that my colors are consistent. It's very important when I work, is that I like to use the eyedropper. Okay, so here's our burger. And notice what I had to do there with the gradient. The reason I did that was because the leg is very dark and it's going to help silhouette one end of the bun, but the other end of the bun is actually jutting out into a very bright background. So in order to make sure that the bun remains legible or visible, we have to apply a little bit of a gradient to it. And very quickly I just used a drop shadow there for the sesame seed buns. I could have just painted those by hand, but it's just a little time-saving technique. And here he has a delicious double cheeseburger with lettuce and tomatoes. And a bite, big bite taken out of it. So as you can tell, I sort of bounce around the paintings. I don't really get mired down in one spot. I tend to work different areas, so I get, I can say fresh, and I don't get sort of, I don't feel like I'm overworking one spot and get frustrated or whatever. So I tend to bounce around a lot when I work. I'll notice something looks a little bit off here, and I'll go and give it a little bit of love, and then I'll come back to whatever I was doing, or I like to address the trouble spots as I see them. So here you can see I'm adjusting the upper portion of his arm just to make the perspective more correct here. Have the forearm resting more on his knee rather than just the wrist. And of course, because of that, we have to adjust the lighting. We're always thinking about volumes and forms and how light is going to affect those volumes and forms. These are the sort of things that I like to keep in the forefront of my mind when I'm working. It's fine to get into the flow and just sort of see where things go, but at the same time, you need to be constantly self-critiquing and making sure that you are, in fact, preserving form and light. Now, at first, this guy had a humanoid face, or human face, really. And he had, he was chewing a burger, nom nom nom, eating. And it looked fine, but I just didn't really love it. He did look really humorous though. His giant helmet and this teeny little head, which was part of the problem. Actually, it was just sort of hilarious. I'd have to crop the helmet in significantly to make it work, but yeah, like that. And all I did was the lasso tool and a little bit of paint over for that. It's very quick to do touch-ups when you're just using normal layers, and you flatten and merge your layers down. You just, lasso, paste in place using Control J, and then you just paint over it or erase as need be. And he's got a nice swollen, bulging cheek because he's got a mouthful of food. And all this for nothing because this is all going to get painted over momentarily. But that's okay. Sometimes when you're working on paintings, it's good to be able to let go and just say, I don't really care about this specific area I've been working on. I can paint over it and it's not going to ruin my day. Okay, so now we're going to do a little bit of work on the sneakers, it looks like. Strangely enough, I have a lot of experience doing sneakers. You might find that surprising considering I'm best known for doing Warhammer 40k themed work for Fancy Flight games or private commissions and whatnot. So generally when I'm doing shoes, I'm doing these plate boots or whatever. But no, I actually have a few clients who do sneaker related stuff, so I've gotten pretty good at painting sneakers, which is a pretty strange skill set for a sci-fi fantasy artist, but it actually has been very useful. Sneakers and shoes can be very difficult to do, so being able to paint them easily is actually quite useful. It's a pretty big boon to have. Just one of those things that you never thought you'd have to learn, and then once you did, you found out it was actually pretty helpful. Also, the shoes here are based off, as many people have figured out already, they're based off Marty McFly's Nikes from Back to the Future. I think it was Back to the Future 2, he gets them. They're the ones with the giant Velcro straps. And I think they were Nike pumps. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they were pumps. Which is really old school. I feel like I'm revealing a lot about my age. Alright, so a lot of scooters have these really cool visor units that the whole thing flips up and down, kind of like a knight's visor. And I just sort of fell in love with that design, so I went back and I decided to edit. And as you can see, all I do is use the lasso tool and just a normal layer with a brush, just paint over it. And it was at this point where I decided to say, screw it, humans are boring, we're going to go alien with this sucker. And that's exactly what we did. And I'm still using normal layers here, I'm just painting over. Nice creepy teeth. And the design for this alien's face was just really, I did not think it through. I was just sort of saying, okay, well this looks cool, and this looks cool, and whatever, it'll work. But in retrospect, it sort of looks like a combination of, for any old school gamers out there, there's this game called Star Control. And in Star Control 3, and I know that most people are going to start rolling their eyes because they have no idea what I'm talking about, but in Star Control 3, there were two alien races. One was called the Vux, and the other were called the Urquan. The Urquan were sort of big spidery tentacle guys, and the Vux were these kind of purple dudes who had these little snouts, like kind of elephant-like. And I think this face sort of is, it's not really directly taken from them, but maybe subconsciously I was sort of designing from that. I mean, if you go do a Google search, you're going to say, okay, this looks nothing like either of those things you just mentioned. But, I don't know. I guess it was on my mind. I think I actually downloaded the game not long after painting this from a website and just, like, marathoned it. It was one of my favorite games when I was growing up. Oh man, he's got some big googly eyes right now. And as you can see, I'm still using normal layers, just round brush. And I actually don't know if I was using reference for this part. I don't think I was. I'm very comfortable doing textured skin and stuff. So, oh here I used the color layer. Why? Because I had to change the color of the hands to purple, and that's just the fastest way to do it. And as you can see here, I just used a normal layer with a brush, hard brush, and I just sort of painted in some textures to make it look more alien. Kind of this ribbed texture that corresponds to the face, almost like little plates or undulating folds of the skin. And it was a nice touch, I thought. I also added some specular highlights and bounce highlights to make the skin look more reflective, sort of more like it was a chitin or chitin, like an insect. Just stuff like that can make stuff interesting. Here I'm using a multiply layer briefly to add shadows, and now I'm back to normal. And I believe I'm doing some rim lights and bounce lights. To explain what a rim light is a light source, or it's what happens when a light source, a very strong light source, is behind the object in your foreground or midground or whatever, and the edge of the object becomes very strongly illuminated, very strongly, and that's called a rim light. And then here you can see how there's sort of a yellow highlight as well as a white highlight on the hands. The second highlight, the yellow one, is the bounce, and that's the essentially what happens is when you have a primary light source like a sun, a lot of the light rays will hit the ground and then bounce back up, and they're not as strong, and they tend to take on the color of whatever they're bouncing off of. So in this case we have like a kind of yellowy desert scene, so the bounce light is going to be actually quite yellow. Also our light source is yellow. A lot of the time, strangely enough, the bounce light outdoors will be blue, just because the sky is blue. But you can get some very interesting colors using bounce lights that are always interesting to see. Okay, so we're just doing some details on the jacket. This jacket was actually really fun. I gathered some reference before to make sure that I had appropriate stuff to look at. And then I just sort of threw together some military-style badges, or maybe a courier service badge, I don't know. Just something to sort of give this guy a little bit more character. He's already got the alien text on the side of his helmet and kind of like the racing stripes or whatever, but I thought it'd be kind of cool to have, you know, it's almost like a Starfleet emblem or something, but, you know, like United Parcel Service or something. You know, internet or Galactic Parcel Service or something funny. And here I go, I'm just refining some of these details on the coat. To make sure that they look a little bit more detailed and thought out. That the folds and the creases are a little bit cleaner. And once again, just using a normal layer with a round brush. Varying opacities. Okay, and here I'm cleaning up the outline of those jeans, as you can see. And I'm just using the eyedropper to kind of grab some of the local colors to do that. And using reference, I think I had a guy like sitting on a stoop or something for reference here. I'm just giving these jeans some folds. Clothing can be very difficult to do, especially without reference. It's actually very, very difficult to do without reference. So whenever you're doing clothing, make sure to try to get some reference material just so that you can kind of see how the folding of the cloth will fall and whatnot. At least I know I do. And you can also see here that you can see my brush strokes, and the reason I'm doing that is I want to imply a texture to these jeans without importing one, and using brush strokes is a good way to do that because it looks kind of like fibers. Okay, cool. So still working on the jeans a little bit, just, you know, putting the the hem, but the seam, the inseam right there, and refining the texture. I'll take a sip of water. And here we're doing a little bit more work on the tentacles just to help them pop off the rest of the character. Now I'm doing a little bit of scuff work on the shoes and still refining. It's actually kind of difficult to narrate sometimes because I do bounce around so much. I rarely stay in one area for very long because I just sort of like to balance the entire thing as I go. I find that this way I have a more consistent level of render on my characters or compositions than if I just say, okay, we're going to do the face, and then I do the face, and it's like really over-rendered, and it doesn't match the rest of the painting, and then I have to spend, way too much time fixing everything else, or I even have to dumb down the face a bit, so I find it's better to just sort of like bounce around and render as you go. You can see I'm still using the eyedropper tool between the shoes and the pants to get the darkest of the darks, the lightest of the lights. I don't want to push the brightness too far or keep it too subdued. I kind of want it to look like it's balanced with the rest of him. And here you can see I'm doing some highlights just to give some volume, kind of like a curved appearance to the sneakers, to the Velcro straps. And lovely. Doing some stitch marks, some kind of harsher highlights, since it's sort of like a pleather or whatever, it'll have those kind of higher specular values, and you even get a little TLC, a little bounce light. Very nice. And there you can see the Velcro strap. Okay. Now this leg needs some help because the other one is pretty well rendered out, but this one hasn't got any love yet. So also you'll see I'm being careful to maintain the shadow of the arm. That adds a visual cue to the observer to make it look like there is depth and play between the objects in the scene or in the composition. So that's very important to do, is to keep those localized shadows. So even though I'm doing highlights within the shadow, I still have to make sure that the shadow is readily apparent. Great. Okay. So doing some seams and stitch marks on the jacket, kind of just refining the design as I work around, putting some alien symbols and more designs into the coat. I love doing jackets. Jackets are great. They, the zippers and all the little things you can throw in there to make them look so intricate. It's fun. I like doing designs like that. Actually, recently I started doing concept work more professionally rather than just sort of concepting as I work. But yeah, it's fun for me. And here we have I threw a katana in there, sort of harkening back to the original concept I had, the samurai type deal. Samurai delivery guy, but that didn't really stick, so that gets painted out, I believe, in the beginning of this segment, momentarily. I don't know what I'm doing now. Looks like no, just doing some textures here and there. Oh, right, I decided to add a sixth finger. Why would I want a sixth finger, you ask? Well, because I don't want him to be obviously human. I want him to be humanoid or alien. I don't want him to be just a guy, so I added a sixth extra pinky on both hands, because that's something clearly people don't have. It will help distinguish his character from people, since he's already bipedal. Okay, so here I'm doing just a little strap around the wrists. Fun stuff, more design on the jacket. I'm really not a clothing expert, but I do think that some clothes have some really nice designs which are just really fun to paint. They add a lot of character. Okay, so here's a very quick and dirty way to do rock textures, which is eyedropper, normal layer with a hard brush, and just these almost cross-hatching type details where I don't really care about really rendering out the stone. I'm just sort of throwing these details in to make it look like there's a texture there. Okay, as you can see. And this also is useful because I'm cleaning up the outline of the rock as I go. Okay, and here I'm refining the helmet so that we can fully show the eye, or at least show more of the eye without it being awkwardly clipped out. And we had these sort of glowy eyes at first, and they didn't look quite right. Then we had sort of these gem eyes, and they looked kind of sad and cartoony. And I moved them around, didn't know where I wanted them on the face. And actually, I think that's pretty close. No, it's not quite. It's very close to the final design, but not yet. I think I just kind of left it alone for a bit. Or not. I guess I kept fiddling with it. I definitely am a tinkerer, so as I work, I tend to go back and change things. See, this there, I just added a little bit more of a smile. And here I'm sort of adding elements of the helmet to the other side of the head to make it look like it's facing towards us a little bit more, rather than being in profile. And more refinement of these rocks. See, I'm kind of just doing these strokes. I'm not really that dedicated to them. I fooled around with doing an antenna on the helmet, sort of anime style, like a Gundam or the Guyver type design. But in the end, it just didn't quite look right. So that's going to get taken out. And more rocks, because why not? Now, I don't know if you'd ever actually find a land formation like this, but these are definitely some rocks with some character, some very strange designs, which is great, since we're doing everything on an alien world. Might as well make it look alien. Okay, you can see there's even a hint of some of the same rock formation a little bit further away, and that's done using aerial perspective. Okay, those eyes are starting to get very close to the finished product. Here I started messing around with the antenna again, trying to just do new designs, see if maybe I could do something to make it look better, but I had like a little bit of a shield that came off the helmet, and then I had these little nubby things, and in the end it just sort of was not working out, so deleted. Okay, some more rocks. And once again, I'm just using a normal brush. I'm either painting in the shadows, as you can see, or I'm painting the highlights. That way I can keep the rocks loose. I'm really kind of just thinking about the texture and the way the light hits those textures, and rather than actually trying to do line art for each stone or pebble or whatever. This is a much faster way to do it. In general, I try to avoid line art whenever possible. Sometimes if I'm doing sketches for art directors, I'll do something in line. Or if I'm doing something cartoony or a concept piece, I might use line because it's just an easy way to convey something. But for a rendered out, fully painted scene or composition, I'm very loath to use line. I think it just takes too long, so I try not to use it. Okay, so I decided it'd be kind of awesome to have a really old school boombox. So I looked up some designs from like the 80s or 90s and painted one in here. Definitely fun, and it was definitely fun to practice doing chrome and whatever, chromed out speakers and all that good stuff. Gotta go back to the shoes, of course. Alright, so you can see I'm using the lasso tool, the polygonal lasso tool, as well as just the brush tool for this stuff, just to keep my edges straight. And I do occasionally eyeball it. In this case, I think I'm eyeballing it. I don't really see any guides or anything. But here we go, using just adding those sort of surrounding details, like you do. And now we do all the tape decks and buttons and stuff, sliders and bass treble controls. all that good stuff. And I don't remember the name of the actual. There was a name on the boombox. I don't remember what it was, but I didn't want to use the actual name, so I just changed it to Jammin', which is actually a Toe Jam and Earl reference, which is on Sega. And then just doing little sliders and colorized areas. Very kind of 90s colors, those like strong primary colors. It looks like I'm talking about something. I don't know what. Just watching a little video at the bottom left. Okay, so it looks like we're still doing some work on the boombox here. And this is very simple stuff, like, you know, it's really flat shapes. It's just keeping everything in perspective. So got to make sure all the lines are parallel. All the angles are hard angled and, you know, the same. And it can be difficult, but it's not that bad. It just takes practice. So there's one little cassette. And then here I added some shading to the speaker to make it look like it was conical. Because we have an overhead light source, the bottom of the cone will be lit fairly strongly, and that represents the light coming directly down. And then the opposite of that, which is receiving the bounce highlight, will also be lit. And then the middle areas between them, which are perpendicular, will be a little bit darker. And the same goes for all these knobs and panels. It's the same idea. Give them that nice chrome effect. Now, I thought about doing like a kind of high-techy alien blue glow, but I sort of thought it broke the theme a little bit, so I didn't keep them. And I think the brand of the boombox was like Lasonic, and instead I changed it to Lasonic and did some alien stuff to it. I know, so clever. Okay, and here we're just duplicating some shapes to make buttons. And the buttons get the same treatment. They get that sort of chrome look to them. Just give a little highlight and gradient and you're all good to go. Same thing with these. Those are little indentations, so the parts that stick out get highlighted, and the parts that are recessed do not. Here I'm doing a little bit of highlighting on the edge. These are really good because they help show how narrow the edge is. It's not a smooth edge. Also, you can kind of add a little bit of weathering because scratches tend to show highlights very well because they are complex surfaces. So as you can see, we're just doing these little highlights here, and they really help. And then right there, we just added that sort of beveled edge that a lot of computers and stuff from the 90s had. Like the faceplate would pop off, and that's where the seam would be. Here we're doing some little variable controls and some made-up little font, some labels or whatever. Attention to detail is important. I think that's actually where the headphone jack goes in. And some more little trim devices. And eventually, there it is, we'll add the handle. And the handle is really just a rectangular prism with some parts removed. So, while keeping perspective, we just add a little bit of depth and some highlights, and we're good to go. It's sort of on those thin, polished chrome handles that came on old boom boxes. Awesome. And a localized shadow, of course. Okay, so we're doing some localized shadows underneath this dude. And we give that a really strong highlight on top because it's black plastic in the sun. And then the boombox itself has some shadows, and here we have some shadows from the rock and the guy. And still, we're doing the same technique for the rocks. We're just doing those kind of cross-hatchy blobs. We don't really care about them that intensely. It looks like right now I'm doing a quick demo of my office, but we're back to painting. Since this is from the live stream, there's going to be some random stuff going on in the bottom left. So be aware. If you're not already aware. I'm pretty sure you've noticed at this point. Okay. More stone, more shadows. It's nice because you can use the shadows to show the form of the stone, so without actually spending a lot of time on the stones. It's sort of more implied. It's very nice. I love using that technique because not only does it save you time, but it makes it look like you really, like you really put a lot of time into it. And it's just nice. It's a good way to apply texture quickly and show volume, angles, light sources. I love it. Okay, now because this area of rock is actually getting more shallow, the angle of the rock is getting more shallow, these kind of crosshatch marks are going to become thinner, and they're going to start touching, and that's to represent the angle of the stone face. If it was, a sheer face, they might be more round and sparse, but since they are angled towards us, we're going to start seeing them almost like a tangent, or we're just going to see the whole surface as one. So that's a good way to show detail and angle. Those are visual cues. Okay, so it looks like we have most of the foreground done. So now I thought it was a good time to go and do some work on the background. And all I'm doing is using the eyedropper and the brush tool, normal layer. And I don't know exactly at which point I decided to say screw it about the city. I think it's coming up soon. I just didn't like the way it was reading. It just wasn't working for me. So I ditched it, and we did a desert scene instead. Because deserts are easy to do. What was kind of cool is that I was able to convert the cities and stuff into plateaus within a desert. So that was a good way to convert some previous work into something usable. And I am all about efficiency, so whenever I can save time and make something look great, I am twice as happy. Looks like I'm getting pretty fed up. I can't read my own thoughts from when this was recorded, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to ditch this city in a second and just say, you know what? Stones are much easier to paint. Since these are done in live stream format, sometimes I feel pressure to get stuff done, so I take the easy way out. Like I could have sat there and I could have rendered out a city. It just would have taken a much longer time. This way, it's just sort of, people get to see me work. They don't have to sit here for several weeks. They can, see it in a couple sessions. It's not going to take 20 hours or whatever to paint. It's only going to, I think this took like 7 hours or something like that. 7 or 11, something between 7 and 11 hours, not that many. Here I'm just smoothing out this face of this. At this point they were buildings, but I'm just smoothing them out using the eyedropper and the brush. Oh, here it is. I started doing some like pipe and wire work, sort of hint at this urban sprawl. And I remember just hating it and ditching it. Any second now. You'll see. I'm just going to say, screw this. Screw this noise. And that happens a lot when I'm working. Because right now I am concepting as I go. I have no idea what the background's going to look like. I'm not using reference. I'm just sort of figuring it out. as I go. So sometimes I'll think something sounds like a cool idea, and then the more I work on it, the less I start to like it, and then eventually I just say, I hate this, I don't want to do this, I'm going to do something else. And it looks like we're starting to move to that point, because I can see the brush is getting bigger, which means that I'm starting to care less. When my brush gets very small, it means I care a lot. So when I'm using a big brush, it means I just want this gone as fast as possible. And like I said, it's gone. It's gone. Bye-bye. Bye background. Nice knowing you. I guess that's technically like a mid-ground, but whatever. Okay, sweetness. And bye-bye other building. Looks like I'm talking about something. Counting off on my fingers. Don't know what I'm talking about. Apparently I didn't during the live stream either, since it seems like I couldn't remember. But, yeah. Bye-bye. Okay, cool. So, with that out of the way, and you'll notice I'm starting to chisel the edges a little bit, soften them up, give them some randomness. And that means that I've given up and I'm making a rock face now. And you can see here, I just sort of chopped off the top of that building and made it into a plateau. And notice how I'm using aerial perspective to separate objects in the background, lightening stuff up to make it look like it's sticking out. And here we're adding some nice little ledges and steps to the plateau, using aerial perspective once again. The parts that are jutting out are closer to us, and they're darker. Alright. Coming along nicely. I don't know if I was using reference for this part. I honestly can't remember. Sometimes I just sort of have an idea of what it's going to look like, so I can kind of just knock it out. But usually I have quite an extensive reference sheet that I use for everything. And somebody actually commented recently that a lot of my paintings have purple in them. And that's true. I'm not sure why that is. I tend to use a lot of purples and yellows, which are complementary colors. But yeah, I don't know. I just like the way they look, I guess. And I feel like they're not used that often in art. I know orange and blue is used a lot, but purples and yellows are sort of avoided. So I sort of tend to use them quite a bit. Pinks as well. Which is funny, because I'm not even doing... this isn't a sunset scene. This is just like an alien world, so I can do whatever I want. But getting some nice kind of warm pinks and purples. And the moon. Moons are easy to paint. Very easy. You can see all I did was I highlighted, and then I highlighted one side, doing like the craters and stuff, and then the other side I will simply use shadow on. And that's it. I'll do a band of shadow along the Terminator. Like so. And some highlights. Perfect. Okay, so working on these rocks, you can see I'm still doing more steps, just using normal layers. Don't really care, keeping it nice and easy. Very laid back. Gathering some reference. Let's say RPK. Rushnoi Pulemyot Kalashnikova. It's a variant of the AK-47. It's the heavy variant. It's a squad-level machine gun. But it's a nice gun. It's essentially just a reinforced AK. It's an AK that's designed to go full auto all the time for squad support. Things you didn't know that now you know. And it is a little bit small, indicating that this guy is quite large. He's a little bit larger than a human, because in the actual arms of a person, this gun would be a bit bigger. So just doing the wood foregrips, the buttstock, doing the muzzle. You can see there's a cleaning rod. Up the front is the gas system. And here we have the receiver that we're working on. The action of the weapon. There's the forward sight. A little light on the mag there. There's the trigger and the mag ejector and the magazine itself. And now we're going to do a little bit of specular highlights. It's polished wood. Classic AK look. Nice foregrips. Okie dokie. So that is a nicely rendered RPK, if I do say so myself. Beautiful weapon. And this is the point of the painting where I sit there and I can't tell if it's done or not. And I'll usually kind of like zoom out and mess with the contrast and brightness and the vibrance, as you can see. I tend to, I don't know why I do this, but I tend to, when I paint, I'll keep my paintings very low saturation and contrast, and I have to go back and edit them afterwards. Also, you'll see I flipped the canvas a few times just to make sure the composition looks sound, and I realized the leg was too long, so I just lassoed and brought the whole thing in. And, yeah, a little work there. Oh, I had some tentacles to his head. Kind of got like tentacle dreads. Tentacles are fun to paint, especially ones that have ridges on them. Kind of reminds me of like old 60s and 50s sci-fi monsters where they've got that vulcanized rubber type of look. Oh yeah, I forgot about this. I added a Space McDonald's box for the burger, and I thought it'd be a good place to put my logo. So there's going to be a logo thrown in on there. Nice, you've got those perforated edges, as you can see. And I think that's like the caloric information right there. Some box design just kind of ripped off from McDonald's or whatever. I don't think they care. And there's my signature instead of the classic double arches. And it's 100% blah, 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 alien language. I don't know what it's supposed to be. Okay. Oh, painted in a reflection of the box onto the chrome. Flipped the canvas a few times, took a look at the composition. Made the nose more alien looking. Just to make sure you really read as an alien. Here I had some dings and scratches to the case for the boombox, because plastic does tend to get scratched up. Give it a little bit more dirt to kind of keep it there in place, hugging it to the ground. Oh yeah, I thought about adding a spaceship, kind of like a rocket, but I didn't like it, so that got ditched. Put some crumbs on him, scuff up the gun. All using normal layers. Just give a little bit more shadow to the burger. And I think we're done. Oh, no, just kidding. Mess with the curves and stuff, as always. Like I said, I have to mess with the saturation and contrast and whatnot, otherwise my paintings tend to be a little bit too devalued and desaturated. They don't really have enough contrast. But I think that's that for this painting. So, it is indeed great. So, if you've enjoyed this tutorial, or you think you've learned something, please share it. It does help me immensely when you share these videos. Also, if you have any questions, please watch my FAQ video first, because I probably have answered them in the past. So go and do that. If you still have questions, then leave a comment. If I get asked what program I'm using, or how long I've been painting, or any of those type of questions, I'm not going to answer because I have a video that explains all that for you. So there's no point in me doing it. If you are interested in commissioning a painting or getting in touch with me, please send me an email at artist@nicholask.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at nicholasmk. And obviously you're on my YouTube channel, so please like and subscribe. And I think that's it for now. If you want to see some more of my art, go to nicholask.com and you can take a look at my portfolio. As I mentioned earlier, I do live streams every Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on my Twitch TV station or channel. If you want to find information on that, just look in the video description. So once again, thanks for watching, and I'll hopefully have some more videos for you soon.